my own, but then after that I had no supervisor at all. So my PhD would have literally gone down the drain. So Mummy came from India and she says, no, I'm sure you can do it. Let's discuss regularly. And of course you'll be able to complete. And yes, I did complete. But I always tell people I did my PhD from the University of Cambridge, but my supervisor is my mom.
Okay, that's
In limited time.
That's what moms are for. Moms are the
Sheila
real
ji?
supervisors. Yeah.
Yes, that's Sheila ji.
नमस्कार सबको.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste everyone.
Namaste.
नमस्ते. नमस्ते बीना जी. रेहाना, बीना जी.
जी मैम.
शीला जी नमस्कार.
नमस्ते नमस्ते सबको नमस्ते नमस्कार.
सुमन जी.
शीला ताई,
वणक्कम.
शीला ताई. डॉली बोलते हैं.
नमस्ते.
नमस्ते शीला ताई.
संतोष जी नमस्कार. नीरू नमस्कार.
नमस्ते सुमन जी.
नमस्कार. बीना जी स्टिल हैं.
युतिका जी, shall we start?
Namaste, Suman ji.
नमस्कार.
I can see Shanti ji and Shweta ji. Namaste. आप नमस्कार मैम.
और बदलना है इसका.
युतिका मेरी आवाज नहीं आ रही.
अब आ रही है. आ रही है. थोड़ा वॉल्यूम भी बढ़ा सकती है अपने सिस्टम.
कहाँ से बढ़ाएंगे?
जो ऊपर लेफ्ट साइड में कुछ बना है ऊपर F1 F2 के पास सबसे ऊपर लैपटॉप में.
हाँ.
लेफ्ट साइड में जहाँ ESC है.
मैम इसमें नहीं आ रहा है जी.
पहले उधर दिख रहा है आपको?
वो इंदिरा भाटिया भी
माइक बना हुआ है.
हाँ.
तो वो छोटा बड़ा माइक. बड़ा मतलब इंक्रीज.
अब देखो.
हाँ बेटा.
बीना जी आपकी आवाज अच्छी आ रही है.
अब अच्छी है.
अब बढ़िया है.
बढ़िया.
अब तो फुल हो गई इसमें.
बिल्कुल बढ़िया. हाँ. हेलो सुप्रिया.
हेलो. हाय युतिका. हाय प्रीति जी.
हेलो सुप्रिया जी. नमस्ते.
नमस्ते नमस्ते. नमस्ते शीला जी. नमस्ते.
नमस्ते नमस्ते.
रीना जी नमस्ते.
नमस्ते. नमस्ते. कैसी हो?
ठीक हूँ. अच्छी हूँ.
ओके.
थैंक यू.
I think we can.
नमस्ते रेहाना जी.
शीला जी.
नमस्ते जी. नमस्ते.
युतिका जी मैं आपको पोस्ट करती हूँ.
ओके. हाय शीला.
Then we can begin.
ओके.
ओ मेरा नाम वो ट्रेजरर के नाम पे आ जाएगा. अब क्या करें?
बदलो.
Is it can we change it?
Yeah. In the system.
No, I'm just asking.
ये किसका फोन है? ये आपका है? ये भी मैं. अच्छा रहना तो चेंज कर दो. व्हाट्सएप नहीं है जी.
आपको ईमेल में जाके बदलना पड़ेगा क्या?
ईमेल में.
वहाँ कर सकते हैं.
Not leave it as it is. How does it matter?
I don't know. शीला जी छोड़ सकते हैं.
Just a minute. Just a minute.
यहाँ पे एक बोर्ड लगा लो ना. नेम प्लेट. नेम प्लेट लगा लो. शीला. She's not listening.
नमस्कार बीना जी. शीला जी. युतिका जी.
नमस्ते. नमस्ते जी.
नमस्ते.
गुणकेशी जी.
नमस्कार. नमस्ते गुणकेश्वरी जी. जी नमस्ते. नमस्ते बीना जी.
नमस्कार जी.
जय नीरू जी. नमस्कार. नमस्ते. नमस्ते गुणकेश्वरी जी. नमस्ते.
कैसी हो गुणकेश्वरी?
मैं ठीक हूँ. मैं ठीक हूँ.
ठंड पड़ रही तुम्हारे यहाँ?
I am talking from Rehana's cabin, so my name will come as
Treasurer.
AIWC, but I am Sheila Satyanarayan.
You'll have to keep on saying that. No.
Yeah.
No.
So I don't know how to change that, so I'm leaving it as it is for the moment. Okay?
Okay.
Sure, Sheila ji.
तो आपके पीछे ट्रेजरर खड़ी है ना, इसलिए आ रहा है शायद.
पीछे खड़ी हैं. तो शीला जी कहाँ गई?
Yeah. Wait, I can't change your.
Why? But I think I can. It's already shareable. If can you? 1 second. मेरा तो शेयर हो रहा है शीला जी.
हाँ,
आप
हो गया.
आप देख रहे हो ना? हो रहा है ना?
हाँ, हो
हाँ.
गया.
बस ठीक है, तो मैं बंद कर रहा हूँ. हो रहा है शीला जी. It's fine. I think we should start.
We can begin.
Yeah.
I think they should start. It's already time.
Okay.
स्टार्ट करें. डॉक्टर करिश्मा जी के साथ टेस्टिंग हो गया युतिका?
हाँ, हो गया था सुप्रिया. It is fine. एकदम ठीक था उनका.
You never know when there is a hitch.
ऐसा ही बैठ सकते हैं।
Yeah.
नमस्ते.
वैसे कुछ तो ले नहीं मैम, लंच तो ऊपर है। अरे किसी से ले आने के लिए बोलो।
रेहाना जी आप
अगर कुछ हो गया तो
फटाफट
सुप्रिया you can do the need.
ऊपर स्टूडेंट्स भी बैठे हैं तो उनको
Pardon?
Mute भी कर सकते हैं.
anyway, पता
Will
कर
you do
लेना
that,
Sheila जी से.
सुप्रिया? Mute.
या
All of them are on leave. That's all.
I know that. या तो मैं ऐसे करती हूँ, स्टूडेंट्स को काम देके within 5-10 minutes आ जाएगी। लंच इधर दे। हाँ मैं लंच लाके इधर। ओके। लंच मत।
शीला जी का आज कुछ क्या? शीला जी टाइम है क्या?
इसका म्यूट है.
हाँ ठीक.
वेबिनार नहीं रखना चाहिए था, आज इतने मिले हो रहे हैं.
उनको
बहुत
YouTube करना है ना, तो we are waiting for that.
Hasmina, can you hear me? Supriya here. Sheila ji.
शांति.
शीला जी
second.
is left.
शांति.
ये रहा ना शेयर
You are muted, Hasmina ji.
मेरा वो सबको शेयर होगा ना.
बीना जी
Yeah,
आप
I can hear. Thank you.
बीना जी
शांति, मैं कह रही हूँ आप कैसी हैं, तबीयत कैसी है?
शांति जी से पूछ रही हैं.
हाँ जी।
Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
शीला जी आपका दिख रहा है, ये पूरा शेयर क्यों हो रहा है स्क्रीन? शीला जी.
मैडम प्रेसिडेंट।
उनको सुनाई भी नहीं.
Sheila ji, your screen has been shared.
इसका म्यूट है शीला जी का.
मैडम
ठीक है, अब ठीक है.
I think she's testing out Aditi's, Preeti's
PPT.
presentation. हाँ.
हाँ.
Comfortable, ma'am?
आज देर लग रहा है क्या? शीला जी any hitch?
शांति से बैठो.
Yeah. Now we can begin.
Okay.
शीला जी
आपका
आपका
स्क्रीन दिख रहा है.
share हो रहा है.
स्क्रीन शेयर हो रहा है.
Sheila ji, let me introduce you to
Share it.
Mrs.
Yeah.
Hasmina Khan.
हाँ.
Hasmina Khan is Mrs. Masuma Begum's daughter, granddaughter.
मेरा वो
Oh,
भजन है
अच्छा,
ना,
okay, okay.
ये भाषा।
She has joined
Shakti.
today
Nice to meet you.
our program.
Nice to meet you, Hasmina ji. Namaskar.
Thank you.
Hasmita ji, Sheila Kakade ji is our president.
I see. Okay. Nice to meet you.
कहाँ से बोलूँ?
So next program we are going to see her on the 27th of January.
Yeah, yeah.
કિરણ કિરણ
Full screen.
આ કઈ આવ્યો છે આના ઉપર
प्रीति जी अभी अपना म्यूट कर लीजिए.
Got it કરીને your CPU usage is
प्रीति जी, सुप्रिया, can you do the name please?
Pardon?
आप
I'm not a co-host. Otherwise, I would have done the muting part.
Before we begin, I would request everyone to mute themselves. Preeti ji and everyone
Yes.
mute. Please mute yourselves so that we can.
myself also.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
when your turn
Screen
comes,
पे
you
है।
will have to unmute yourself. Okay, Preeti ji.
ये भाषा स्क्रीन
जब
पे है।
आपकी बारी आएगी
मेरा
तब
वीडियो
आप
कहाँ है?
स्क्रीन म्यूट कर लेना, ठीक है? वो
मुझे
आपको ही
कैसे
करना पड़ेगा अपने एंड से.
नहीं चाहिए। तो इसको ऑफ करना पड़ेगा। हाँ, वो कैसे ऑफ करें?
अब तो ठीक है शीला जी.
अब ठीक है जी, आप ना मेरे में उससे कर लीजिएगा, आप इसको चेंज मत करो। पर मेरा भाषा मेरे पे आप कर दो। इसको इसको कम करो तो।
युतिका जी
हाँ, क्या?
मैं अभी मेरी तरफ से म्यूट नहीं कर सकती हूँ आप कर सकते हैं तो कर दीजिए.
Oh no, no. तो अच्छा कोई
You
बात.
can mute her,
मैं खुद
Yutika.
No,
You
I
can
can't.
do that.
I
Go
cannot.
into the
शेयर
participants.
करेंगे तो मेरा भाषण दिखेगा।
Go into the participants. Look at Preeti's name.
को होस्ट कैसे किया?
No, I don't think that icon I can't see. You know the microphone जो होता है ना उसमें आ नहीं रहा है.
ये उसमें
Chat आ रहा है.
हाँ,
इसमें तो ऑप्शन नहीं आ रहा.
ये
इसके
बंद
ऊपर क्लिक करिए.
किसको?
Then you'll get more.
और आप होस्ट, आपको होस्ट बनाया हुआ है इन्होंने, तो उसका प्रिंट निकाल लेते हैं आपके भाषण का. आप कागज से देख कर
अब हो गया, म्यूट हो गया. प्रीति जी का
नहीं, इसमें है ऐसे
हो गया.
वो नहीं ये कैसे
वो आ जाते हैं.
स्क्रीन व्यू कैसे किया तो हाँ अभी तक ठीक है. अभी
में कितना काम करा था.
है
इसको कैंसिल कर दो, कैंसिल कर दो. कोई और
हाँ
आप अपना वर्किंग खोलो.
ये है
खोलो.
अच्छा युतिका
Is it okay?
या
No? Echo तो नहीं हो रहा कोई echo?
नहीं.
Okay.
हो रहा है कुछ echo.
स्टार्ट वीडियो
नहीं अब तक नहीं.
There's some sound in the background.
वो शायद रेहाना जी का भी ऑन है ना भाई.
It's हाँ रेहाना जी के विंडो से.
नहीं पहले स्टार्ट.
Okay. Namaskar. A very good afternoon to everyone. Before we begin our program, I would request everyone to mute themselves so that we can start. Kindly mute yourselves. A very good afternoon. We are gathered here for yet another episode of our ode to our past presidents. जैसा हम सभी को पता है ये कार्यक्रम बहुत ही अधिक पॉपुलर और आज अब तो दिख रहा है कि सब लोग वेट करते हैं कि किस दिन ये अगला कार्यक्रम आए और हम उनके बारे में सुने। तो ये ही इस कार्यक्रम की सफलता है और ये एक हमारा तरीका भी है अपनी पास्ट प्रेसिडेंट्स को अपना ग्रैटिट्यूड दिखाने का और उनके प्रति अपना नमन करने का। तो इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ आज हम 25वीं और 26वीं प्रेसिडेंट्स के बारे में सुनने जा रहे हैं। श्रीमती रक्षा शरण और श्रीमती मीठन जमशेद लाम जी, ये दोनों AWC की प्रेसिडेंट रह चुकी हैं। 1959 और 1960 में श्रीमती रक्षा शरण थी और श्रीमती मीठन लाम जी 1961-62 में AWC की प्रेसिडेंट रही। To begin with, we have a very interesting program as always. And before we start the program, before I call the speakers, I would request our president, Srimati Sheila ji, to kindly address the gathering. Welcome and give us your idea about what AWC was like during this period in the 50s and 60s. Sheila ji, over to you.
Yes. Thank you, Kritika ji. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Namaskar and Merry Christmas and hearty welcome to all my dear sisters and the guests who have joined in today's webinar, taking us on the virtual journey with All India Women's Conference from the years 1959 to 1962 with our very powerful presidents, Srimati Raksha Sharan and Mrs. Mithan Lam. Mrs. Raksha Sharan was the president in the years 1959 and 60. I am sure each one of you will be interested in knowing how we got our home at 6 Bhagwan Das Road and how our predecessors toiled relentlessly for the dream to become true. Mrs. Saran had in her team as Vice President Srimati Saraswati Giri, wife of President V.V. Giri, then M.S. Jhabwala, Mumbai, Tarabai, B. Tarabai, Directress, Lady Irwin College, New Delhi, Srimati Jayashri Raiji, Mumbai, Srimati Vijaya Rajesh Scindia, Maharani of Gwalior, Srimati Indirabai Devdar, Pune. Her honorary general secretary was Sarojini Vardhappanji. All of us know her very well. And honorary treasurer Srimati Kunti Sondhi from North Delhi. We have our assistant secretary, Mrs. Sheila Satyanarayan, with us to share all the interesting information about Srimati Raksha Saran, our 25th president.
Excuse me,
I
Sheila ji.
appreciate your cooperation
there's
and
an
hard
echo.
work put in digging the information about Srimati Raksha Sharan. I am also very grateful to your patron.
शीला जी आवाज एको हो रही है, एको हो रही है. There's one more connection which can be muted.
से गड़बड़ हो गई है.
बहुत इको हो रही है.
मोनिका
सुनाई देता एको हो रहा था. नहीं, और भी साउंड होना तो बड़ा नहीं. अभी एको हो रहा है तो ना होते अब तो
ये
आपके दो सिस्टम है, हाँ, तो एक को ऑफ कर दो.
तो इको क्यों हो रहा है?
और एक आपका सिस्टम ऑन है जिसमें से आवाज आ रही है. There is one more connection.
शीला जी दो दिख रहे हैं.
दो है.
दो दिख रहे हैं.
हाँ, दो हैं यहाँ.
ये
ऐसे
होस्ट भी बराबर है.
ट्रेजरर के भी दो दिख रहे हैं, ट्रेजरर के भी दो.
हाँ, रेहाना जी आपका भी म्यूट रखिए.
प्रेशर के तो दो हैं because Sheila Satyanarayan has joined from there.
Yeah, but it can be muted right now.
चलो अभी देखते हैं.
now only one.
Yeah, can you
Yes.
Honorary
Yeah.
Treasurer Srimati Kunti Sondi, and we have our Assistant Secretary Srimati Sheila Satyanarayan with us. Now also it is
No, no, there is
to
still
share
echo.
all the interesting information about Srimati Raksha Saran, our 25th President. फोन तो बंद है में तो ऑन नहीं है जो कैसे दिखाई दे रहा है पता नहीं
वो दिखाई, and then we are getting sound from both.
क्या है
नहीं ये तो इसको ऐसे करो तो याददाश्त नहीं लगती
I am also very grateful to our patron, Mrs. Beena Jain, in extending helping hand in getting more information about Mrs. Saran. Incidentally, today is Mrs. Raksha Saran's son's birthday, and I do not want to miss this opportunity to wish Shri Ashok Ji Saran a very happy, healthy, and peaceful life always. Happy birthday, sir, from whole of AIWC family across the country. Padma Bhushan Srimati Mithan Lam honored the presidential chair in the year 1961-62. The Government of India awarded her the third highest civilian honor of the Padma Bhushan in 1962 for her contributions to society. She was the 8th president of AIWC, who was honored with this award in 1962. She was an Indian lawyer, social activist, and sheriff of Mumbai. She was the first Indian woman barrister and the first Indian woman lawyer at the Bombay High Court. She had in her team as vice presidents Meraben Zabwala, Har West Mumbai, Srimati Mausuma Begum, Hyderabad, Srimati Sarojini Vardappan, Madras, Srimati Kusum Shah, Surat, Srimati Kundrani Gandhi, Indore. Honorary General Secretary was Dr. Srimati Fularenu Guha. Honorary Treasurer was Pramodaben Gosalia, Santa Cruz West, Mumbai. SCM and one of the secretaries of Mumbai branch, Srimati Preeti Pancholi from Santa Cruz West, Mumbai, is with us today to share Srimati Mithan Lam's contributions to our All India Women's Conference. We also have Dr. Karishma Gavita from London giving us more information about Mrs. Lam's work. I'm very happy to welcome Nilofer Lam, granddaughter of Mrs. Mithan Lam, and few more of their close circle in today's webinar, and request her to share her memories of her grandmother whenever she feels comfortable. So far, we have researched and presented the exemplary work done by more than 50% of our past presidents, and I feel all of them are such role models that each one of us are inspired to do selfless service to the society. I'm very sure after listening to the presentations today, all of you will feel very proud and powerful. For the sake of the guests today, let me give some information about AIWC and activities conducted by you all. All India Women's Conference is the 94 years oldest national organization established in 1927 by Sarojini Naidu, Margaret Cousins, Dr. Annie Besant, Maharani Chunnabai Gaikwad II of Baroda as the first president, and Kamla Devi Chattopadhyay as the first secretary of chosen representatives of these conferences all over India attended formal conference in Pune and we had chosen Maharani Chunnabai Gaikwad II of Baroda as the first president. At present, we are housed at 6 Bhagwan Das Road, New Delhi. The education and position of women in British India needed a lot to be improved, and the formation of the community of women to work towards improving AIWC rose further along and gained consultative status of ECOSOC with United Nations and other international bodies like International Alliance of Women, Pan-Pacific South Asian Women's Association, WREN, InfoSay, etc. Many institutions like the Lady Irwin College, New Delhi, Cancer Institute, Chennai, Family Planning Association of India, Amritkar Institute for Mentally Challenged Children, Old Age Home at Vindravan are few among many others pioneered by AIWC, which are now autonomous bodies in India. All India Women's Conference also brought upon many legislative reforms in India, including the Universal Adult Franchise, Hindu Code Bill, Maternity Benefits Act, Sharda Act, etc. AIWC at its own level runs projects and programs implementing the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 516, particularly of importance for peacekeeping as they stress on gender equality and promoting peaceful and inclusive societies. Regular creche programs are run in the branches. Many branches are running primary schools, working women's hostels, short stay homes at Vrindavan and at head office. Besides, 10 more branches also run these programs. National integration and communal harmony are being offered as programs to AIWC's vast network of branches numbering around 500 plus all over India. Other programs conducted are health checkups, anemia programs, socio-economic programs for empowerment, looking at the need of the hour, lot of awareness programs on gender sensitization, sexual harassment, legal awareness, environment and climate change, renewable energy, water waste management, etc. are done during pandemic. All were done virtually. All of you, I would like to put a full stop to my speech because it's being echoed and I do not want you to be disturbed more. So I wish you all stay happy, healthy, peaceful and motivated by the energies of our past presidents. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all my sisters and their near and dear ones. Yutika ji, please carry on.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sheila ji. Thank you for outlining what AIWC stands for and all the work that's being carried on by us now. And as we know, it is due to our earlier precedents that this precedent had been set and we are still following. We are lucky we had these personalities as our elders. So let's get back to the program and let's talk about Srimati Raksha Saran, our 25th president, a little more. As we all know, she was a national figure who worked closely with the government of India, especially in the field of education and upliftment of women and children. So we start the program. I would like to call the first speaker, Mrs. Sheila Satya Naren. She's Assistant Secretary at AIWC in the head office. She's going to speak on work and life of Mrs. Raksha Saran. Sheila, over to you.
Thank you, Yutika. Namaste to all. Before I begin my presentation and talk about Raksha Saran, I would like to acknowledge the guidance and support provided to me for this presentation by Mrs. Jain, Mrs. Veena Kohli, and Usha Nair. And also I'm thankful to my friends here, Sujata, Ranjana, Ritu, and Pratibha for helping me put this together. And of course, needless to say, to our management team for giving me this opportunity to present this. So let's now go to the beginning. Sheila ji, will you please share the presentation, please, on the screen? You're muted, Sheila ji.
No need to unmute. You just please share the PPT.
नहीं हो रहा है
नहीं होएगा वो मरी का उधर
है
In this age of gadgets, we have to be a little patient. Takes time.
uh, can we go ahead without the presentation?
No, I think
Maybe
she's trying.
Sheila can begin
You can,
talking
Sheila
about
ji,
it.
please. Sheila ji, please send it to me. If you can send it to me, I'll do. Okay, it's there. Good. This is fine, Sheila ji, we can see.
You can begin, Sheila.
Yeah, now, okay. Let's move. Mrs. Srimati Raksha Saran was our 25th president. And the beginning is like Raksha Saran, as we all know, was the daughter of Raizada Hansraj, who was also called as Mahatma Hansraj. He was the founder of DAV Educational Institutions and Hansraj College, Delhi. And Raksha Saran was born in Lahore and she did her graduation in Lahore but went to the UK for her higher studies. She had specialized in the field of education and social welfare. Raksha Saran was married to Sri Raghunandan Saran, who was also a free from Punjab. Next. After independence, Sri Raghunandan Saran was persuaded by India's first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru to invest in a modern industrial venture. Ashok Motors was incorporated in 1948 as a company to assemble and manufacture Austin cars from England, and the company was named after the founder's only son, Ashok Saran. Ashok Motors was founded in 1948. The company had its headquarters in Chennai with the manufacturing plant in Chennai. Unfortunately, Sri Raghunandan Saran died in an air crash shortly thereafter, and the company, under the Madras state government and other shareholders, finalized the deal for an investment and technology partner with Leyland Motors, and thus Leyland Motors joined in 1954 with equity participation, and the name of the company was changed to Ashok Leyland. After this, Raksha Saran was on the board of Ashok Leyland for many years. Next. Raksha Saran held various important positions during her time. She was the principal of Gangaram School, and then she was the chairman of Delhi Women's League affiliated to AIWC. She was the president of International Council of Women Indian Chapter, founder trustee of Indian Council for Child Welfare Trust. She was the first chairperson of the Women's Advisory Committee of the Indian Standards Institution, now called the BIS. She was the president of Federation of University Women. She was the chairperson of National Council for Women's Education, Government of India. She was the chairperson of Delhi Social Welfare Board, member of the governing body of Janki Devi Mahavidyalaya and Indraprastha College for Women in Delhi. She was the member of the governing body of Kalavati Saran Children's Hospital, and she worked on the Social Welfare Rehabilitation Directorate with Srimati Rameshwari Nehru. Next. Now come to the ARWC finding its home and the role of Mrs. Raksha Saran in this. Mrs. Saran was the convener and treasurer of the fund committee set up for the collection of funds for the establishment of Sarojini Naidu and Margaret Cousins Memorial. This was a dream which everybody had at that time, and it was her duty to convert this dream into a reality. The focus at that time was to establish the Margaret Cousins Library and to build a hostel for working women. It was also her responsibility to locate an appropriate building or a plot for the same. There was, luckily for ARWC, government was considering the sale of 6 Bhagwan Das Road, which was very suitable for our organization, which was centrally located, and there was enough land for expansion. This deal was approved by our standing committee, and the deal was stuck at rupees 5,50,000 with a down payment of rupees 1 lakh, and the rest had to be paid in installment. I mean, think of the time then. It was not so easy. 5,50,000 sounds not so big now, but it must have been terribly big at that time. So during that time, AIWC didn't have any money, and Raksha Saran gave her personal security of rupees 1 lakh to the bank. And then only Mrs. Lakshmi Menon and Mrs. Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay signed the papers for the property. And next, they had to really persist with the ministry to get aid for and for acquiring this property. So with great effort, the Union Ministry of Education agreed to give a grant of 50% of the estimated expenditure, though they had a few conditions which we had to follow. One was that the Government of India grant will not exceed more than rupees 2,55,000, and All India Women's Conference have to meet the remaining expenditure. AIWC should provide proper accounts to Government of India from time to time, and the premises cannot be used only to house the AIWC building, but we should also have a library for women and children, and the property could be developed for other social and educational programs they have to take up. These were the conditions on which we got this property. Raksha Saran had managed to collect about 2,27,384 rupees, including the 1 lakh released from the ministry. And this money came with a big chunk of rupees 15,000 was given by Mrs. Lakshmi Menon, and West Bengal government had given about 20,000 rupees, and a small donation of rupees about 1,666 came from UK. So the fund collection drive had to be continued. This was not just sufficient. So Delhi Women's League organized a dance program by then famous Kamala Lakshman, which this program was a huge success. We were able to get Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru, Prime Minister of India, to preside over this function. And this program fetched an amount of rupees 21,000, which is a big amount at that time. And Mrs. Saran's personal appeal to people in Delhi had fetched about rupees 50,000 as donation. Mrs. Lakshmi Menon's appeal had already collected funds from USA of rupees 8,500. Saurashtra government gave 2,500. Rajasthan government gave 5,000 and Hyderabad state rupees 1,000. And not only this, with contributions from several sources, including many branches, the All India Women's Conference finally had a home of its own. So these are some of the pictures. You can see the Raksha Saran with the model of the proposed AIWC building. And the next picture you can see Raksha Saran with Lakshmi Raghuramaya and others admiring the proposed model of the building. Next. These are all the stalwarts of AIWC, Hansa Mehta, Tara Devi, and all of them with Raksha Saran. We can see all the elegant ladies. It's such a pleasure to see them all together with some foreign dignitaries also. Next one, please. This is again, we don't know which event is this, but we can see Raksha Saran. And I can see our young Janaki Rajaram somewhere in the background. But I'm sure there is Ashoka Gupta to be seen, I think. And I'm sure you will all recognize more people from this picture. Very nice picture. Yeah, let's move to the next. This is again Srimati Raksha Saran addressing a meeting. We can see the elegant lady in her beautiful sari, quite an admirable looking lady. Wow, very nice. Just such a pleasure to see these pictures. Let's move to the next. Okay, now we are coming to Mrs. Raksha Saran's role as president of AIWC. Mrs. Raksha Saran, on taking over as president, called for a change in the mode of social welfare programs. She believed that social welfare programs have value only if supported by economic welfare. Must be empowered to supplement their family income or earn a living wage. Mrs. Saran took education programs a step ahead, calling for education of women for the specific needs of our nation, since she felt that all educated were not usefully employed. So ahead of her time. Raksha Saran advocated that women should receive specialized training in new and emerging careers, which was new at that time, of course, such as commercial art, interior decoration, display art, secretarial work, and business management. Mrs. Saran urged members of AIWC to arrange programs to draw out educated women from cities into villages by holding short and specific programs in camps near the villages. It's such a novel idea. You know, not everybody can actually move to the village, but if you hold programs on and off, get the women to come and meet you and talk to them, it definitely helps in a big way. AIWC also realized that there were thousands of married women who desired to take up part-time jobs and also offer voluntary services to organizations. I am sure we have many of our elderly members who fall part of this group, who were willing to do voluntary services to the organization, and AIWC was the big place which helped them to achieve their whatever desire of helping the society. And then, so education continued to be of important point for Raksha Saran as president. So during her time, the National Committee on Women's Education was appointed by the government with Srimati Durgabai Deshmukh as chairperson to ascertain what the country's needs were and how many women were required in certain fields for the purpose of nation building. Education of women was prominent in AIWC programs. Continuing on the same education programs, Raksha Saran had conducted in 1959 an extremely useful seminar on higher education of women. In this program, young and old participated enthusiastically in the discussion. Most prominent and distinguished participants of the seminar were Rajkumari Amrit Kaur, Hansa Mehta, Kamla Devi Chattopadhyay, Dr. Muthulakshmi Reddy, and Durgabai Deshmukh. Women from all walks of life presented their point of view freely. Journalists, architects, engineers who were in the profession which was new to them expressed their views. You know, that was the first time I think women had come forward and become journalists, architects, engineers, and all that. So they discussed the prejudices in government circles to employ and promote qualified women. They always found excuses to not to promote women, giving various examples. So the group could discuss and debate on what are the prejudices which are in existence. So at that time, they also decided that there should be co-education, which is very essential, as if you have to do a specialized program, specialized education, their equipment needed for giving specialized education was expensive. And to have a separate uh, college or school for both women and men was difficult. So they were promoting co-education. Another recommendation was the need to make science subject compulsory in all girls' schools at the secondary stage. Till that time, they never thought that girls need to study science, but they decided that we should make science a compulsory subject. And she made a promise as president of AIWC to cooperate with Central Social Welfare Board in organizing welfare activities for women. And next one, please. Next, please. Now we go to Mrs. Saran's role in the international arena. Mrs. Saran visited Bangkok to attend the 10th plenary session of the World Federation of United Nations Association, also called as WFUNA, as an observer on behalf of AIWC. WFUNA was characterized as a non-official United Nations. The session was being held for the first time in Asia, attended by 43 countries. A large number of decisions taken were of significant importance and covered political, economic, educational, and cultural fields. Next one, please. Two historically important decisions taken, sponsored by India, were inclusion of China in the United Nations and the principles of Panchsheel, cooperation and coexistence on the basis of international relations. A very decisive and conciliatory role was advocated for adjudicating the issue of membership of East Germany into WFUNA. Two other resolutions sponsored by India at the meeting were to start a movement for the regional exchange of fruit and forest trees to help and increase food and forest resources, organize Asian handicrafts exhibition to develop cottage industries. During this meeting for Raksha Saran, it was a proud moment because all the delegates were well acquainted with AIWC and they could come and talk to her, and they were aware of all the famous personalities of AIWC. So it was a very, I'm sure she must have felt really good about it, that everybody knew about AIWC. Next is Raksha Saran visited New Zealand as a delegate from AIWC to the Pan-Pacific Women's Conference. In her address, she highlighted the projects undertaken by AIWC for the betterment of women and children. She thanked the organizers of CORSO, that is the Council of Organization of Relief Services Overseas. They used to normally send gifts which are meant for the voluntary organization to be, to help the needy. So she thanked them for the wonderful gifts which they were sending to all the voluntary organizations in India. Somewhere else, I had also read that government of Mysore in return had presented a baby elephant to New Zealand. So it must have been really impressive. That elephant was called Bhavani, and so the relationship between India and New Zealand through these voluntary organizations must have been very good at that time. So the next is this picture of the regional conference of International Council of Women, which was held in New Delhi in 1977. We can see that Princess Purachatra from Thailand. And there is this Raksha Saranji is there as the Indian president of ICW. So Indira Gandhi ji had inaugurated this conference. Next picture, please. This is again Raksha Saranji presenting some memento to one of the foreign dignitaries. We don't have any caption for this picture, so it's just our guess. Next one, please. This is again Lakshmi Raghuramaya addressing, and Mrs. Raksha Saran and Lakshmi Menon in the picture. This is, we can see Srimati Lakshmi Saran with Vijay Lakshmi Pandit and others. We don't know at what occasion this was, so we don't have any captions. Next. This is the 28th session of the All India Women's Conference in Kanpur. So you can see the number of delegates. It's quite a huge number. Raksha Saran is there, but we can't really see. And this is our members along with Raksha Saran and Lakshmi Menon and others visiting the then President Sri V.V. Giri. So this is again another beautiful picture. Next one, please. Here is another international conference where Srimati Laksha Saran is there, and we can also recognize Srimati Lalita Balakrishnan. She's there, but we don't know which conference is this. So this is another very nice picture. Next one. Okay, now that comes to the end of the pictures. After a life filled with varied activities for building the newly independent nation, empowerment of women, building international partnerships, most significantly helping AIWC to be on the sound footing with our own office and building, we are ever thankful to Mrs. Raksha Saran. She breathed her last on 15th August 1992. A beautiful story about Raksha Saran. I'm sure there is so much more if we go on really doing some research on that. Thank you all very much for listening patiently. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. That was an amazing presentation. You gave such new information. We didn't know all this. And it's so good to hear that now we are moving towards an era which is more closer to us, more contemporary, as you showed, maybe Janki ji was there somewhere in a picture. You know, that was so good to see. You know, now it's getting closer to us. And another very important thing that I saw was the spirit of voluntary service, you know, that they inculcated. Beena ji wants to say something. Beena ji.
नहीं, मैं सिर्फ ये कहना चाहती हूँ कि आप जैसे जानकी को पहचान रही हैं उसमें,
जी
इसी
जी
तरीके से हमारी दीपाली सेन गुप्ता in those pictures, she is there. She was the Secretary General of All India Women's Conference. And also the Nargis Rajkumar is there. Nargis Rajkumar was the Executive Secretary All India Women's Conference many years. And very efficient person, very efficient person. And Dipali also was there. So we should take the name. Dipali has played a very, very significant role in this building and other things, because her husband was is a deputy the governor in he helped a lot
in building the in the building
in taking the loan from the banks, and he pursued that bank should take the building on rent.
Oh, okay, so
it's a very major role of Dipali's husband.
Teamwork it was, the way
It was teamwork, and her husband helped a lot.
I think we have seen husbands have always been there at the back, you know, helping. So behind every successful woman, there is a man.
Yeah.
We can say that now. That was so interesting. I think we should add these names, Sheila, in the presentation and in our records. For that, I would request the library to take a note. So we have now a video clip. I'll share the screen. There's a video clip of
it is an audio, Yutika.
Audio clip,
It's
yeah.
audio.
Audio clip of her daughter, the daughter of Mrs. Raksha Saran, Mrs. Indra Bhatia. And she's going to talk about remembering, she's remembering her mother through this. Can you see this? I can play. Yeah.
Yes.
And you can hear.
Greetings to everybody. I would like to thank the AIWC members for doing this webinar in memory of my mother, Raksha Saran, and sharing her body of work during her tenure as president of AIWC. AIWC was an intrinsic part of her life. I would also like to apologize for not participating live. I have jotted down my memories of her, which I would like to share with you. Raksha Saran, a warm, loving, beautiful mother, was a woman of grit, resolute in the face of vicissitudes life threw her way. She was a woman ahead of her times. Daughter of progressive parents, she went to study at St. Anne's, Oxford, England, at a time when most Indian girls led sheltered lives, brought up to be good wives and mothers. Upon her return to India, she went on to become the principal of Sir Gangaram's school, driving around Lahore in her red cabriolet, playing tennis in her sari, an emancipated woman. A woman who made her own choices on how she wished to live life. She married in her 30s, a love marriage with a partner in the freedom struggle, again going against the social norms of the time. Her husband, a freedom fighter, came from a Delhi-based business family but had joined Gandhiji to fight for India's freedom from British rule. A strong member of the freedom movement herself, she had to, however, play a less active role, being the mother of two small children, and also as her husband was constantly in and out of jail. My early memories of the tragic partition are of her being actively involved with the refugee camp at Kingsway Camp, working closely for rehabilitation of the displaced women in dire need of income. The next big change in her life came when, after freedom was won, her husband decided to take up Nehruji's call to work for the economic development of the country. He chose to move to Madras, now Chennai, to be an entrepreneur, and set up a public limited venture now known as Ashok Leyland in 1948. We became a nuclear family living in a home remodeled by my father in Madras. However, this was short-lived as catastrophe struck in 1953. My father died in an air crash, and mother had to once again wind up her lovely home and move back to Delhi, her social work sadly interrupted. The courage she showed to deal with this terrible loss and the challenge to now be a single parent at a relatively young age to two teenage children was exemplary. With renewed vigor, she continued her fight for women's rights, their education, and their upliftment. In sharp contrast to her wardrobe full of only hand-spun khadi saris, in keeping with the call to wear Swadeshi and boycott British goods. However, incongruous as it may seem, her collection of a variety of shoes was phenomenal. We teased her mercilessly about this weakness of hers, but she took it in good humor. We learned that in her youth she had been a weekend painter of watercolors and played the sitar, now totally eclipsed by her hectic life. She was a wonderful grandmother and doted on her 4 children who adored her. They remembered her as one full of fun, always ready to participate in any of their activities. She imparted to them her love of the mountains and travel. She was concerned about their well-being and education and constantly encouraged them to pursue their dreams. She was a woman full of wit and was upfront about her views with a perfect sense of diplomacy. She was, for the family, a woman to be emulated, to be admired for her deep commitment to social issues, for combining her public and private life with equanimity. Truly a remarkable but very human woman. I do hope that I have done justice to what my mother's was, a figure larger than life in public, but at home, just a normal, ordinary, loving mother. Thank you. Greetings to everybody. I would like to thank the AIWC members for doing this webinar in memory of my mother, Raksha Saran, and sharing her body of work during her tenure as president of AIWC.
Sorry.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you. Thank you. This was brought to us by Sheila. Thank you, Sheila. You, I think you had to work, take some extra effort.
Nice.
And with, I think, Mrs. Jan's help. This is a clip, an audio clip worth treasuring.
Yes.
This purpose.
Yes.
Yeah. And because these clips, these insights give us new ideas, new, we get to know new nuances about these people. We didn't know about those when as they are public figures. So how they are privately, that's so interesting to hear. This was Srimati Raksha Saran for us. So we go over to our next president, 26th president, Srimati Meetan Jamshed Lam. And
Yutika ji, before we proceed, Nilofer is here and we should welcome her.
Okay.
Nilofer Lam, her granddaughter, sorry.
Can we see?
She's here. She has just joined.
Okay, we welcome you, Nilofer ji.
Can we see you?
Yes, just give me a minute.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm not sure if you can see me. Can you see me now? Hello?
We can see you.
Yes, we can see you.
And hear you.
Great. Thank you. Also with me is my sister, actually, who's her second granddaughter,
Okay.
Jai White. I think, there she is. She's looking like a Mr. Bradley Gold, but it's actually Jai
Oh,
White
okay.
because she's logging in from her husband's computer. I think she had some technical
Okay.
glitch. And she's actually dialing in from the UK. And I'm in Mumbai.
Welcome to both of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good to have two granddaughters here. Okay, that's a bonus for us. Yeah. So I hope you'll share some insights. Once
Yes.
we had our talks, we would request you to speak a few words. So we begin
we
our
surely will.
program. Yeah. We begin the program on Srimati Mithan Jamshed Lam. She was a successful barrister and a campaigner for women's rights, and the first woman to be called to the bar at Lincoln's Inn in January 1923, and the first female professor of law. She has so many firsts to her credit. And now she was one of the a very successful AIWC president in 62, and was awarded the Padma Bhushan in 1961. So we have, to speak about her, we have Dr. Karishma Gavita Koka. She's a neuroscientist, environmental scientist, and learning and development mentor at London. And she has several achievements to her credit. She has co-founded the Ultimate Achievements Academy with her mother, and whom we can see on screen along with her. And as she just conveyed that she is the main, force behind her success, we can see that. And Karishma ji is also co-founder of Ba Humata Fellowship of Collective Consciousness. And she believes that the principles of education, science, and the faiths work synergistically for peace and progress together. That's such a lovely thought. And she has several, works with several organizations and NGOs. So here you are, Dr. Karishma, and we are all ears and want to hear what you have to tell us about our 26th President, Mrs. Mithan Lam. Over to you, Karishma ji.
Thank you very much, Yutika ji. I'd like to invite Nilofer Lam and Jay White to first share their personal thoughts with us. And because I'm deeply honored that upon my invitation, simply a phone call to Nilofer, she's joined in and introduced us to her sister. They also have a brother here in the UK. And I think it is their voice we need to hear first today, if I may, with your permission.
Sure, sure.
Yes, sure.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. Totally.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So maybe I'll just, to give a bit of context, I'll rewind a couple of days ago. And I think it must have been about 11 o'clock or maybe 12 o'clock India time. And I received a call from Karishma, who kindly reached out to me. And she said to me, do you know, or are you by any chance related to a lady called Mithan Lam? I said, yes, she's my grandmother. And at which point I think Karishma almost fell off her chair. So I just have to share that little anecdote, because I think she just, I think she found my details on the internet or on LinkedIn or something. And maybe she hadn't had a cup of coffee in the morning. Karishma, I'm taking a few liberties here. Please forgive me. And so then we started to chat. And I'll let my sister say a few words if she wishes, but I think on behalf of all of us, we're extremely privileged, and thank you greatly for everybody at IAWC for inviting us here today to share not just about our grandmother, but also about another amazing lady. When you hear these stories, I think it really makes one feel that I think we could all do a lot more. But anyway, that's maybe something for another day. My grandmother passed actually when I was quite young. So I have some memories of her, but not many. So please forgive me perhaps if I can't elucidate as much as I would like to. I think the one thing that really strikes me is that she was a very progressive lady in all shapes and senses. So whether it was progressive in terms of her own education, she was very fortunate to be part of a family that strongly believed in education for women. And that is something even today that we have in our family. Also, I think fearless in terms of her travel. She traveled the world, partly for herself and for her family. I think partly also for the AIWC. And I think her contribution to the whole women's agenda, trying to get equality, women's education, thought, is something I think that we're truly proud of. So I don't really want to say too much more, but for her, I think for us at least, you know, she's somebody that we are very proud of, and I hope in our lives, in some way, we can do small justice to her memory.
Thank you, Nilofer. I think we want to hear from the other granddaughter as well. You are muted, ma'am. You are muted.
Jai, you're on mute.
Am I unmuted now?
Yeah.
Jai, you're on mute.
Hi, my name is Jai, and I'm a little older than my sister Nilofer, and as Nilofer said, we have an older brother. We were all, to be honest, quite young when our grandmother used to visit us in England. But I think, you know, she did, when I certainly remember her coming across and used to sort of get very excited, as you do when you don't live in the same environment as your grandparents. So it was always very exciting to have her over. I think more importantly, though, obviously she, you know, as we've grown up, for me and my family and my children, and I think Nilofer's the same, and our brother, as Nilofer said, we're incredibly proud. And I think, again, living in a different society, to hear how one's relatives have impacted, it's astonishing. And I just think, from my perspective, I love to hear more about what she's done and how she did it, and try and impress those strong ethics, I think, on future generations, especially our girls, about independence, about hard work, and how people, they take it for granted now. And I think, you know, we have to realize what predecessors have done to allow girls and women to be where they are today. So we just like to hear or read when there are opportunities more about her. So thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you so much. You're so right. It's about preserving our inheritance, the heritage, which is so golden. That's exactly what we are doing at AWC. So thank you so much for being. And on in a few minutes, you just decided to join. That is amazing. That speaks a lot about you both. Okay, so do we have Dr. Karishma now with your presentation? Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Nilofer and Jay, for sharing with us your own insight into your grandmother's influence in not just your lives, but the lives of other people through time. I'm going to start sharing a presentation I've put together, but information is very sparse. So if anybody would like to add in, please do. I've titled it The Good Mind and Dedication to Justice. Mithibai Adarshar Tata, as her name was when she was born, who then grew into Padma Bhushan Mithan Jamshed Lam. I've got about 10 minutes, very kindly given to me by our organizers today. And thank you, Sheila ji, for inviting me to give this talk. My gratitude is to my parents, Commander Koka Rammohan and Mrs. Jaru Rammohan Nipantiki, who's with me today. And as I studied the story of Mithabai Lam, I saw the reflection in my own life. And as her parents educated her, encouraged her, I've seen how my parents have given up so much to educate me and continued that through my life. My gratitude also to Dr. Mrs. Shernas Kama of Parjor for introducing me to Sheila ji and for references that I'll be using today, and to Mr. Yazdi Tantra of Zoroastrians.net, and to Mr. Malcolm Debu of the Zoroastrian Trust Funds of Europe here in London, and other esteemed researchers and their reports. Padma Bhushan Mitha Lam, Nitata,
was the illustrious daughter of dedicated parents and the mother to a very great surgeon in the UK, Sora Blam. Her childhood was in Fulgaon, Nagpur, and her father, Mr. Ardeshwar Tata, was a weaving master in a textile mill. He not only encouraged his own wife, Hirabai Tata, to study by employing teachers, but then went on to educate his daughter, partly fund her travel to the United Kingdom, and then encouraged her to stay on in the United Kingdom to study at the London School of Economics, an extremely prestigious institution. Encouraged his wife, Hirabai Tata, I'm sure, to take up courses at the London School of Economics while she was here accompanying her daughter and supporting her with every step of her journey. Meetan then went on to, of course, become the first woman sheriff of the Bombay in 1947, sat on a committee in 1933 to amend the Parsi Marriage Act of 1896, and took on several roles as chairman of the committee to look after refugees from Pakistan, helped improve conditions in the Matunga labor camp, and worked to help run a medical van to villages near Thana in Maharashtra. So when I see people talking about sustainable development and the United Nations 17 SDGs or Sustainable Development Goals, as far back as Meeta Tata's life, as her childhood, where you can see her in 1911 with her mother Hirabai in this photograph from the Bangalore Mirror and the Pune Mirror from 2009, one can see that sustainable development goals had already become part of people's lives in those days. Furthermore, I see her in the significance of her life as that which influences our life today, influences governance. For example, she wrote an article which is supposedly submitted for publication according to the AIWC archives, called A Common Civil Code. And I see this as possibly being a predecessor to what we know as the Uniform Civil Code, which is part of our Indian governance today and has influenced governance across the world. It's also called Samana Nagrika Samhita, basically implementing secular personal laws of citizens, irrespective of religion, caste, gender, marital status, giving people the ability to work in society, work for the good of others, something that was denied to women and men of certain status in the olden days. Meeta Tata, born in 1898, was very much part of the London School of Economics and the law system in the UK and is still revered for her contributions in universities. I found at least 2 universities referencing her and honoring her in the United Kingdom. So Meeta Lam, thank you, Mama, came to London with her mother in 1919. Her mother was Hirabai Tata. And as the London School of Economics has referenced in their library assets and documents, Hirabai was referenced as a social reformer. So it wasn't just one generation, it was at least 2 generations, not just women, but men in the family who contributed to what we see today as our liberties, our born rights, which of course we take with our responsibilities. They came mainly to contribute to the debate that went on to reform how women could be given the vote. She then went on to study for a master's degree in economics and law and completed that in 1922, while her mother then took on courses. She was one of the 2 students introduced to King George V and Queen Mary when the foundation stone was laid at the old building at the London School of Economics in May 1920. Of course, as her introduction by our esteemed organizers today has already informed us, she joined the Lincoln's Inn in 1920 and then was called to the bar to be a barrister in 1923, and just after the reforms came in to allow women to take on such roles. And then she returned to India in 1924, becoming the first female barrister at the Mumbai High Court, then called Bombay, of course, and then a professor of law, and continued to speak both in the news and through her education work. She was also featured in British newspapers. I couldn't find the reference to this particular paper, but this referenced her completing her degree in 1922 and then went on to take on her role as a barrister. She was also featured with her mother in the international women's suffrage news articles, as you can see here. And I'd like to then tell you a little bit about her mum first. Her mother was Hirabai, who in 1915 became the Honorary Secretary of the Women's Indian Association, the WIA, in Mumbai, involved in promoting women's rights to the Montag investigation in 1916, and then to the Sadborough Franchise Committee. Now, you heard Meeta Lam's granddaughter, Nilüfer Lam, a little while ago. Interestingly, Nilüfer is also a lawyer, also educated at the London School of Economics, and also married to a lawyer very similar to her grandmother was married to a lawyer. And as you saw, she's very much a person who responds in the moment as positively as possible. Hirabai was also a founding member and the General Secretary of the Women's Indian Association and became a woman who petitioned for enfranchisement before the Montague-Chelmsford investigation in 1917 with her daughter. On the 2nd of August 1919, Hirabai, with Meeta Lam, accompanied Sir Sankaran Nair to present this memorandum on women's franchise to the Joint Select Committee, while the 1919 Government of India bill was being discussed. I see what the outcome of this was as the power to take decisions on such an important vote being allocated to the states of India. Now, the Madras presidency was the first to give the right to women to vote, followed by Bombay and other areas. And interestingly, my great-grandfather was the Secretary Madras presidency. So I know the value this had not just to individuals, but also to the governance of India. As you read through the articles, however, some people have reported upon this in the negative, saying that the people who went as part of the advisory board, as part of the discussions, did not succeed in getting Britain to give women the right to vote. I see it as a success, a beginning of the transfer of power, a beginning of, in some ways, Swaraj. And that is my insight. In 1919, on the 22nd of October, an article in The Guardian in England was published, titled A Strong Appeal. If you look at the bottom right, Meeta Lam says, at that time Tata says, we claim the vote for these reasons, first of all on principle. So they gave many reasons. They gave reasons of education, reasons of ability, reasons of right, but mainly it was principle. The statement was put together called Why Should Women Have Votes and sent to the India office on the 25th of September 1919. And yes, in that it says it has been recognized now in all countries that sex barrier has been a grave mistake, is out of date, unworthy of the times, and a relic of past days. It also bases the argument on respect, and then went on to say how it empowers people to take good action. Now, some of you will remember the talk I gave earlier this year in March, April on Hilla Faridun Rustamji. In that I did mention that in the Zoroastrian faith, both men and women are honored due to their good actions, so that they can bring happiness to others and empower them to take good action. And education is given a very, very key, significant role in life and in governance, such that in the everyday prayer, taking good action and sharing the outcomes with those who need is absolutely key. Together with what the prophet Asho Zarathustra is guided in his Gathas, to listen, reflect, decide to take good action. And it is founded upon the concept of justice and fairness, which I think Meeta Tata, who went on to become Meeta Lam, not just acted upon, but has empowered others to act upon. So while Hirabai and Mitha presented this reasoning for women's suffrage in India to the Joint Select Committee in the House of Lords and Commons, which then went on to review the Sadhpura franchise discussions, Mitha went on to receive a place at postgraduate courses at the London School of Economics. Her mother Hira stayed on with her and actively participated in education. And they stayed at that time, according to reports, at 16 Tavistock Square in London from November 1919 to March 2020. To give you a little background, there were people who thought, and it's important to see different sides of what people's mindset was at that time, that women's enfranchisement being important may be less important than being a nationalist in colonial India. But Lam saw no contradiction, at that time Tata saw no contradiction between the two demands. And as it is said, he branded men's reservations against women's voting rights as a soap bubble material, saying men say home rule is our birthright. But Hirabai stated, that's the mother, echoing a famous national slogan, saying, "We say the right to vote is our birthright and we want it." And she went on to act upon this. So finally, as I said before, the British Parliament left this decision about female suffrage to the discretion of the Indian provinces, where Bombay and Madras took on the decision first, and it went on to go through society. I'm grateful to articles by Parinaz Madan and Dinyar Patel for BBC, and other articles that have referenced this. And I'd like to just mention briefly that during a 1911 visit of Princess Sophia Dulip Singh to India, both Hirabai and Mithibai Tata met her and apparently were influenced by her, according to reports. I've listed out some of the details for whoever sees this reference later on. And they actually were accompanied, or they accompanied Sarojini Naidu and Annie Besant through the Women's India Association in their work. This article is by Charu Mathur, posted by Arzan Samwadi and the Parsi Khabar. Now, the All India Women's Conference is a very important place where people of like-minded thought came together. In the Zoroastrian faith, there is a very important prayer called the Arya Maheshyo, where people actually pray to bring them together with other people of noble mind so that they can take good action. And the All India Women's Conference provides people, I think, with this opportunity. So Meeta Lam and Ms. Kapila Khanwal represented the All India Women's Conference as the Australian Women's Second Charter Conference in Sydney. They not just spoke of the Charter in terms of enfranchisement of women, but they also spoke of the food problem in India. And there was an offer from Australia forwarded to the food member of the Government of India as an outcome of this discussion. It wasn't just education for others, but her own education that was stellar. So before qualifying as a barrister at law from Lincoln's Inn, Mithibai Lam Tata also won the Cobden Club Medal for her role in her studies at Elphinstone College, securing the highest marks in economics. She became the first woman to practice law at the Mumbai High Court, a part-time lecturer in jurisprudence and torts at the Government Law College. Then in 1934, member of the Committee to Amend Parsi Marriage Act. 1947, chaired the Women's Committee for Relief and Rehabilitation of Refugees from Pakistan. This is from the London School of Economics blog by Sue Donnelly, with references from Dr. Sumita Mukherjee. So as you can see, her education in economics then filtered through her work with food, her work with helping people get jobs. And she was honored in 2018 at the Zoroastrian All-Party Parliamentary Group organized by the Zoroastrian Trust Funds of Europe and chaired by Gareth Thomas, the Member of Parliament, and Lord Bilimoria, where Dr. Sumita Mukherjee presented some of her work, along with references to other people, including Hilla Faridun Rustamji. And I'm grateful to the report by Shazni Y. Munshi, which was submitted to several different journals, and to Dr. Mukherjee for her research. The British Online Archives has very clear reference to all the work done by Hirabai and Mitha Lam, together with the work by other people. And I'd like to point out at the end of this report, they managed to gain support from a diverse range of British organizations, which subsequently made their voices heard by many. This concept of drawing in the many required mother and daughter to travel to the far ends of the United Kingdom, including to Scotland, in what were very difficult cold times at that time, and encouraging people to stay empowered by learning about what was going on, learning about what could be achieved. And when she became Sheriff of Bombay, as is referenced by Parinaz Madan Dinyar Patel, she was the first Sheriff of Bombay at that time in 1947. So these are some of the other articles. And in this article by Vanchuk, it says, meet the Parsi lawyer who helped ensure women, Indian women can vote freely. So the concept of being able to vote went with education, went with nationalism, and went with the concept, as I see it, of being a global citizen. In the, well, Kapila Ben and Srimati Mitha Lam went to Australia in 1946, as I've mentioned. But it wasn't just the food. It wasn't just the vote, but it was also educational for cultural understanding. And at that time was a hostile atmosphere of the Cold War. This is according to the Oral Historian blog online, which anybody can research. And I suggest people actually do their own research, because what is presented from many different points of view enables us to form our own point of view, which is possibly unique to each one of us. Mitha Lam was also the Joint Secretary of the International Study Conference on Child Welfare in Mumbai. While I haven't found the letter to the editor that is referenced in the Times of India, September 22nd, 1952, I do hope somebody will be able to trace this and share it with us in the future. She's also been spoken of in the book by Geraldine Forbes and Geraldine Hancock in Women of Modern India, Volume 4. She's also featured in a calendar called Worlds Beyond, which you can see on the left, and published her own autobiography, a very slim book, which I haven't had the opportunity of reading yet, called Autumn Leaves, but I have read excerpts from it, thanks to an interview with Parinaz Madan and Sujata Massey, who was actually influenced into writing a book, a novel, where the protagonist is influenced by Mitha Lam. I'd like to let us actually look through this, because it echoes something that our introducer and organizers have said before, that family is very important. So Mitha Lam, or Mitha Tata, married Jamshed Lam in 1933. He was a lawyer. She was supposed to be 35 at that time. And when Sujata Massey asked Parinaz Madan, do you know anything about her husband Jamshed Lam's feelings about her continued activism and legal activities? This article references Mitha's own autobiography, where she describes Jamshed as a wonderful and loving husband who was proud of her achievements and helped her to advance in every way. And she says she's been lucky to have a liberal father of advanced views, a loving and generous husband, and a fine son. And we have the two daughters of this fine son with us today, a fine son and their lovely mother. Her spearheading of hunger eradication programs, anti-child labor advocacy, slum improvement projects was very important to the advancement of India, and through example, advancement in other parts of the world. And she was very young in 1928. She also joined protests, according to this article, by the Bombay Youth League about a school fee hike in secondary education. This is clearly important from the concept of justice and fairness, because the Bombay Chronicle noted, and I quote, the ridiculous plea that higher education should be further taxed to find funds for primary education is aptly described by Ms. Tata as a policy of robbing Peter to pay Paul. Now, her work in the United Kingdom has been honored and acknowledged And the Royal Holloway University featured Meetha Tata. As you can see, the picture from the Daily Graphic of 1923, 29 January 1923, was featured in a display exhibition in the university and at Lincoln's Inn. He was then honored with the Padma Bhushan in 1962 and was honored in a blog by the Indian Army, which featured this image of her and the Padma Bhushan. She's been featured in articles such as the Sydney Morning Herald, which I found online. It's the top left, where she's featured with the other people who went to Australia as delegates of the AIWC. She's also been featured in a book by Devleena Ghosh and others on the Second Australian Women's Charter Conference. And the charter framed by the AIWC about the trade union movement in India, together with the food crisis, brings together, as I said earlier, what we now think of the United Nations 17 Sustainable Goals. But the All India Women's Conference was able to do this, together with the other good minds they had at that time, in a way that was a predecessor to everything modern, as I see it. They also have at the All India Women's Conference archives reference to Meetha Lam from 1946, the article in the special issue of Roshni, their journal, where she's written impressions of the Women's Charter Conference in Australia, which is in the November issue. And it's an interesting thing where it says, after describing a series of problems women face in Australia, Lam wrote, and I quote, "These things grieved us greatly, for we were under the impression that women in Australia were very advanced." So this is the concept of listening to what was happening outside and listening to the inside voice. That is so important to the concept of justice, the concept of education, and the concept of the Zarathustra conscience, where Asho Zarathustra does teach us to listen to the inside and the outside, reflect, discuss with like-minded people, discuss with our own conscience, and then act. So I leave you with that thought and the great work, not only of the great lady, of her family, and of the All India Women's Conference.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Karishma. That was an excellent presentation. Thank you to the mother and daughter team that we can see on the screen. Thank you, Dr. Karishma, and to your mom. That was amazing. So much insight you gave. So incisive it was, and so well researched. I remember your earlier lecture also, you know, when you gave on the 9th president, Srimati Hilla Rustamji Fardunji, and there also it was so well referenced. And some of the very interesting things, I mean, I got stuck up on the note where you talked about the biography. We don't have that. Is it available, the biography of Meetha Lam?
It is available. I'm very grateful to Nilofer Lam also for referencing the autobiography. I'll hand over to Nilofer. Nilofer has also shared, because I did ask Nilofer for her insight into this concept of the Uniform Civil Code.
Yeah.
So this morning, Nilofer has sent me some articles which I will then study. But as she is a lawyer and has read through the Autumn Leaves, I'd like to hand over the mic to the granddaughter of Meetha Lam. Nilofer, may I hand over to you for your insight?
Yeah. And where to get this autobiography?
It's available from the J.R. Karma Institute online. Nilofer, over to you.
I could get it actually. So I have a slight confession that I did have a copy of it and I somehow misplaced it. So yesterday morning I ran over there to get a copy, and so I now have a copy, and I think that they do have a few more copies, so I'd be very delighted to get one and send it to you all.
Perfect.
No problem. So yes, they do have copies there. That's all I was about to say.
Thank you, Nilofer. That would be a great help, because
our pleasure.
Yeah, that will complete the collection that we have in the library, and all the archival material that we have on these ladies is also good. And I also remember Dr. Sumita Mukherjee was here when she was writing her book. She came over to the library and she did her research here also. So that was such a nice input from both. Yeah, please.
So I just want to add on to what Dr. Karishma was saying. I believe that there is a copy of what she had written, which is the Common Civil Code, in the library there. But I mean, it's a physical copy, is my understanding.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think you were referencing that earlier, and you'd asked me to look into it. So that is my understanding that it's there, but it's not in digital form.
Thank you very much, Nilufer, because the Common Civil Code is not something well referenced. A lot of people reference the Uniform Civil Code, which came later. And this article that I cannot get my hands on, which I would really appreciate having a chance to read, if you could somehow in the future share it with me, and your own insights as a lawyer, will be, I think, foundational to understanding how the ladies of that time, together with their families, have contributed to what then went on to Jawaharlal Nehru and the support he gave, and became the, I think, but I haven't read the Common Civil Code, which I think went on to influence the Uniform Civil Code, which is fundamental to the governance not just of India, but to other countries around the world. So this concept of what we call Swaraj, and references what we call in the Zoroastrian Dhyana as Bahukshatra, good, strength, and power that goes with responsibility, that we not just inside, but that we seek to reflect in our work outside and in society at large. So I would really want to dig into this concept of the Common Civil Code. Thank you very much, Nilufer, for your insight, for your input, and for your support. And my gratitude also to your sister, Jai White, for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Very
Thank you
insightful.
so much. Yeah. Thank you on that very important note of the Common Civil Code, now known as the Uniform Civil Code. I think we go over to our next presentation. And about the Uniform Civil Code, there are many research articles and still being researched. And AIWC, you're right, Dr. Karishma. AIWC was the first one to talk about it. Thanks to these ladies, these awesome ladies. Now, we move on to our next presentation, and this is AIWC and its past president, Mrs. Meetan J. Lam, by Mrs. Preeti Pancholi. Preeti ji,
नहीं जरूरत नहीं है हो गया कर दिया हाँ आप जा सकते हो थैंक यू वेरी मच थैंक यू वेरी मच मणि को भी
Sheila
मैं
ji,
बात
you are
करूंगी
very much audible. Can you mute yourself? Yeah. This is Mrs. Preeti Pancholi, who's going to talk about Mrs. Meetan J. Lam as the past president. Mrs. Preeti is the standing committee member, AIWC, and secretary of AIWC Mumbai branch. Over to you, Preeti ji. Can we have you, Preeti? Yeah. You have to unmute yourself.
Wait.
As you did. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Done.
Perfect. Go on.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you very much to giving me this opportunity. I am starting. The government of India awarded her the third largest civilian honor of the Padma Bhushan in 1962 for her contribution to the society. She was an Indian lawyer, social activist, and the Sheriff of Mumbai. She was the first Indian barrister and the first Indian woman lawyer at the Bombay High Court. She was a member of the All India Women's Conference and served as its president in 1961-62. Next. She appointed as a chairperson of All India Women's Conference from 1961-62 while serving term. She also started an official journal named Stri Dharma, and she served as an appointed member of the Organization for United Nations Affairs. She was also active with the National Council of Indian Women, founded 2 years prior to AIWC in 1925, and was a member of Legislative Labour and press committees. Next, she was in Maharashtra, India, in a Parsi Zoroastrian family. She was born in 2nd March 1898, Maharashtra, India, and died at the age of 83 in 1981. Her occupation was lawyer, social activities, and her active years were 1919 to 1981. She was working in India. She was known for women's rights, advocate, suffragist. Mithan Lam, a powerful advocate for Indian women. Next, about her parents. Her parents' name Ardeshet Tata and Herbai Tata. Spouse name Jamshed Sorabsa Lem. Children that Sorabsa Jamshed Sorabsa Lem. She awarded the Padma Bhushan Cobden Club Medal. Next. Now we can know about the childhood. Her childhood and early education were at Pulgaon in Pune district, where her father was working at a local textile mill. But later on, she moved to Ahmedabad when her father shifted to his job to the place. Soon she came Mumbai, where she joined Prairie Creature School. At present day, the very well-known school, J.B. Petit High School for Girls to complete the school's education. Lam was born in 1898 into a wealthy and progressive Parsi family. While on a holiday in Kashmir in 1911, she and her mother, Hirabai Tata, had a chance to meet with Sophia Dulip Singh, and an ardent feminist and suffragist in Britain. As a teenage, Mithan was clearly inspired by her mother's social activism and commitment toward the securing equal voting right for her women, and that likely to set the stage for her female suffragist movement subsequently. Next, about her graduation. Her graduation was from Elphinstone College, Mumbai in 1914, and she secured her degree in economics with honor, winning to the Cobden Club Medal for standing in economics to complete her master's degree, pursuing law and qualified as a barrister at Lincoln's Inn in 1990. At Lincoln Inn in London, one of those students, Mithan Lam, was an Indian. In 1924, she became the first woman to be allowed to practice law in the Bombay High Court, shattering one of the strictest glass ceiling for the professional women in the country. Next. Lam served as a visiting faculty at the Mumbai Law College, and her contributions were also reported in the drafting of Hindu Code Bill. She was the founder president of the Indian Federation of Women Lawyers, a vice president of the International Federation of Women Lawyers, and chair the 13th Convention of the International Federation of the Women Lawyers, besides serving as the representative of the Federation at the United Nations. Next, but the Lam's influence extended well beyond the bar. She left an indelible stamp on the female suffragist movement and the struggle for the gender equality in India. integrated by a colorful badge, proclaiming what for women. Lam and Tata were equally drawn into the case of Indian female suffrage. Mithan had a stellar academic track record even before studying law. She obtained her BA from Elphinstone College, Mumbai. She then went to pursue MSc degree from London School of Economics. Next. Since Mithan's childhood and early life were steeped into the polio and social activism, law was natural career choices for her. As a Zoroastrian, her legal expertise was sought in reforming the law of marriage and divorce in the Parsi community. She probably recognized the potential of a legal career to create a lasting and meaningful reform in area that she deeply cared about. Such a woman and a children's rights and ably supported by her parents along the way. Is next. This is the one photograph. Indian women's delegation in USSR, July 1958. See the all ladies. Next. Next, please. Yeah. One of the women's organizations that she was most prominently associated with was the All India Women's Conference. As its president, she propounded a shift to a focus from sewing and cutting classes for women to their more active participation and industries and emphasize on the need for family planning. Next is the AIWC conference photo in 1962. Delegates are there. See the all ladies. Next. She also encouraged the women to take a more active role in civic engagement and public works in the country. After the partition in India in 1947, Mithan was tasked with being a chairperson of the committee constituted for resettling refugee women and children in Bombay. Next. The delegates of All India Women's Conference. This is the very lovely photographs. Next, now about Mithan's life. Mithan's life when she started working as a barrister. Ironically, Mithan begged her first legal case from a client who wanted to inflict upon the opponent the humiliation of being defeated by a woman. She recalled feeling like a new animal at the zoo while appearing in the court, arousing the curiosity of men and peeped through its doorway to catch a glimpse of these unique spices. Understandably, this made her feel extremely self-conscious. Such act as a discrimination not with understanding. Newspaper records reveal that the Mithan practiced in court for about 15 years from her enrollment as a lawyer in 1924 in India. About her family. About her family life, Mithan married in 1933, probably at age 35. Her husband Jamshed Sorab Salem. She describes Jamshed, a lawyer himself, as a wonderful and loving husband who was proud of my achievement and helped me to advance me in every way. I have been greatly lucky in menfolk of liberal father and generous husband, and a fine son of whom any parents would be very proud. Next, about son. Sohrab Jamshed Sohrab Salem. Date of birth 22nd October 1934 and birthplace at Bombay, India. And also death 13 November 2010. And by a profession, he was orthopedic surgeon and trauma surgeon. Next, about her husband. Mithan Lem was married to a Jamshed Sorabsa Lem, a lawyer and a notary public, and the couple had two children. One, the daughter died young age, and the son Sorab Jamshed Sorabsa Lem, popularly known as a Soli, who died in 2010, was an orthopedic surgeon, a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons of England and Humanitarian Society's award winner for pioneer fractured kneecap surgery. Next, he was born in Bombay, India, the son of two distinguished lawyers. His father, Jamshed Sohrab Salam, a solicitor, and a mother, Mithan Lam, nicknamed Tata, a barrister, and one of the first women to be called to the British bar in 1923. Next, Mithan became blind towards the later days of her life and died in 1981, age 83. Her husband preceding her in death by 2.5 years. His life story has been documented in her autobiography, Autumn Leaves, published by K.R. Kama Oriental Institute. Her biography is also featured in encyclopedic book, Encyclopedia of Women Biography. About her mother, Hirabai Tata. Hirabai Tata was born in 1879 in Bombay and died in 1941, which at the time was in the British Raj. At age of 16, यानी कि 16, she was married to Ardeshir Bejoinji Tata. Hirabai Tata was a passionate advocate of women's rights who tried to elevate the condition of rural Indian women. Hirabai Tata was an Indian women's rights activist and suffragist. Married in 1895, Tata's husband was progressive and supported the education of his wife and daughter, hiring a tutors to help her with her schooling. This is her mother and daughter. Next. In 1915, Hirabai became the honorary secretary of the Women's Indian Association. In 1909, Tata, who was Parsi, developed an interest in theosophy and within a few years made the acquaintances of Annie Besant. Around the same time in 1911, she met Sophia Dulip Singh, a British suffragist with Indian heritage, who influenced her the development as a suffragist, a founding member and a general secretary of Women's Indian Association. She became one of the women who petitioned for the enfranchisement before the Montagu Kempsford investigation in 1917. Thank you for giving me good opportunity.
Thank you, Preeti ji.
मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा आपने मेरे लिए ये जो पीपीटी बनाया है, और शुक्रिया भालेराव जी और युतिका जी का भी, और अपने अलका भगत जो बॉम्बे ब्रांच में है, उनका सबका मैं बहुत आभार व्यक्त करती हूँ और आभार मानती हूँ, और आपका सबका आपने मुझे बहुत शांति से सुना और मुझे भी बहुत अच्छा लगा. थैंक यू वेरी मच शीला जी.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I think with this presentation, we come to the end of the program. If someone, I can see the patrons there and some senior members are there. If anyone wants to say something on the two presidents or anything related to that, even for that matter on uniform civil code or the whole thing. जैसे बीना जी ने तो बहुत ही अच्छे insights दिए, you know. She gave us additional information on the earlier presentation. But someone can say something on this? Any Veena ji, Veena Kohli ji, I can see. Anyone? Or any?
Yutika, can I come in? I'm
Yeah,
Usha
yeah,
Nair.
yeah, I can see you. Are
Yeah,
you
I
there?
just want to add to what Sheila has told us about Raksha Saran. Today being National Consumer Rights Day, I think it is very apt that we are remembering her on this day because she was one of the pioneers, in fact, founders of the consumer movement. And she was nominated, as she has also shown in the presentation, she was president of the Women's Advisory Committee of the Consumer Right, that is ISI at that time. So it is very apt that we are remembering her on this day when it is the National Consumer Rights Day. And we can see that she was one of the founders of the Child Welfare Committee, which has now become, I think, the ICC, the Indian Council for Child Welfare. And then she was also president of the chairperson of the Central Social Welfare Board and a number of other organizations, which shows the prestige and trust that All India Women's Conference enjoyed at that time because the government was nominating our leaders, all these top positions, and they all played very active role in the nation building at that time. So it is just adding to what Sheila has already said, all excellent presentations, and it has been a really enjoyable journey down history. Thank you. Thank you all of you for putting up this brilliant show. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shaji. That was such a useful input, and we need to do that, especially on the consumer right front. I think that's so well said. Today we are celebrating that day, and so many other committees to which she was, of which she was a member. That was so nice. Thank you, Ushaji. Thanks again. Anyone else? Veena ji, Veena, I can see Mrs. Veena Kohli. You want to add something, ma'am?
Thank you, Yutika. I really don't have much to add, except that I had the pleasure of meeting Meeta Lam while we were in Mumbai, and she was associated somehow with the Family Planning Association of India, where my mother used to work, and she was a friend of Avabai Wadia and Lady Ramarao, and I was still in school when they were working together. But I had the pleasure of meeting her. I do remember that. She was a great personality. And their whole life is an inspiration for us. I think what they did, how they worked, and how highly educated these magnificent women were. I think we are very lucky to have had to have this webinar today and to know more about them. And also that we at AIWC have had the privilege to have them heading our organization. Thank you. There's nothing more I can add, except to just go on and on praising them.
Yeah, no doubt. We are the inheritors, so we have to be proud of the fact, definitely. Thank you so much, Veena ji. Thank you. That was such a nice input. I wish you have some of you could share some photographs if by chance you have photographs of those days when you were with some of these ladies. That would be wonderful. Anyone else who would like to share something? Shall we close the program now? I think it's time. And
sorry, hello.
Yeah, hello.
Thank you.
Yes.
May I just say thank you very much. It was very insightful, very informative from a personal and perspective. May I request if it would be possible to have a copy of the two presentations, please?
Yeah, we have a recording. We also record this program and it's on YouTube also. So
Okay.
we can send you that, sure.
That would be lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
We'll share this with all of you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. So
Thank you very much for joining us. It was really wonderful having you on a short notice.
And as you
We're
know,
lucky to be here.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
lucky to be here.
And Nilofer and Jay, if you have some special photographs which you maybe digitized or some which you can share with us, that would be wonderful.
We'll try and figure something out.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you so
And
much.
that's your daughter, Nilofer?
Yes, that's my daughter, her great-granddaughter.
Good.
So we have the next generation also here.
Also
Yeah,
here.
so I got her to listen in for 10 minutes or something earlier. It's good for them to listen.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. And I now invite Mrs. Supriya Bhalirao, Joint Secretary AIWC, for the formal vote of thanks. Supriya, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Yutika. And good evening, all. This is Supriya Bhalirao, Joint Secretary AIWC, delivering the formal vote of thanks. Firstly, I thank our President, Mrs. Sheila Kakade, for conceiving this amazing idea of presenting our past presidents. This has given us a great opportunity of having a peep into their personal lives and work lives and get inspired. This is the 17th session where today we have presented our 25th and 26th presidents, Mrs. Raksha Saran and Mrs. Mitan Lam, respectively. Thank you, Sheila ji. I thank our Secretary General, Mrs. Kuljit Kaur, and our Treasurer, Mrs. Rehana Begum, for their 100% involvement in this program and full support to the series. I now would like to thank our guest speakers. Now, firstly, Mrs. Indira Bhatia, the daughter of Mrs. Raksha Saran, for taking the time out and for that audio recording of a speech. It was wonderful to hear you, ma'am. I now thank Ms. Nilofer Lam and her sister Jay for joining us at the webinar at a short notice and participating in it. Thank you, Nilofer and Jay, for sharing some of the memories of your grandmother. And I thank Dr. Karishma Gavita Koka for that excellent presentation on Mrs. Mita Lam. This is not the first time we have had her as a speaker. She has given us a talk on Mrs. Sheila Rustumji Pardunji, our 9th president, earlier this year. Now, your research, Karishma ji, is so thorough that there are no time gaps left, and the information is elaborate and interesting and with all possible details. Thank you so much once again. Now I thank our AIWC sisters, starting with Mrs. Sheila Satyanarayan, the Assistant Secretary of AIWC, who's given us an excellent presentation on Mrs. Raksha Saran, her present and personal life. Thank you, Sheila, for all that effort you put in to put together this presentation and also get the audio message of Mrs. Indira Bhatia. I thank Mrs. Preeti Pancholi, the Standing Committee member of AIWC and Secretary of AIWC Mumbai branch, for that wonderful presentation on Mrs. Mitan Lam and our 26th president, covering her life and telling us all the details about her life. thank you very much for preparing the PPT and presenting it yourself. I would like to thank both our patrons, Mrs. Beena Jain and Mrs. Veena Kohli, for their presence at today's webinar, which is a mark of support and encouragement to this series. I thank you for your interventions also. I thank all the vice presidents present here for attending this webinar. I also thank the zonal organizers and all members in charge who are present here. I thank all the guests outside AIWC and all our members for attending it. Today, I must mention the special presence of Mrs. Hasmina Khan, who's actually the granddaughter of our past president, Mrs. Masuma Begum. She's going to present next time. Sheila ji,
Yes.
a special introduction to you too.
Yeah.
I'm very happy and I'm very grateful to all of you for attending this webinar, and I hope you've enjoyed the session. In the end, I have to thank Dr. Yutika Mishra, the member in charge of MCM Library of AIWC, for her excellent moderation of this webinar. Thank you, Yutika. Thank you so much. And I announce this webinar to be ended here.
Thank you, Supriya. Thank you. The final thanks goes to you for everything. Thank you, everyone. And season's greetings and very happy new year to everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Merry
Thank
Christmas.
you. Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas. Merry
Same to
Christmas,
you. Thank you.
all of you.
You can close, Sheila ji.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye. Thank you.
Namaskar, Beena ji, Sheila ji. Namaskar. Beautiful, beautiful, amazing webinar. We have learned many previous presidents' history.
Ranjana.
Can you hear me?
Good you liked it. Thank you.
Beena ji, namaskar, Beena ji.
Thank
I'm
you,
not-
Sheila. Thank you.
Yes,
Beena
yeah,
Jain.
namaskar.
Can I end the meeting now?
Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.